All right, what's up everyone? Welcome to a Heath Presents showcase. This will be a post-commentary of a practice run that I did for FE7 draft racing. I'm going to be joined today by our usual draft race connoisseur, Raisins. How are you doing?
Doing very well today. Draft race connoisseur, I like it. I do love draft race though.
It's really fun. FE7 I think is both of our favorite, and we both enjoy playing FE7 draft races, even though we're not actually racing, but also practicing. And part of doing that is trying to figure out good strategies, just doing our runs, changing strategies here and there, seeing what works and what doesn't. And lately I've also just been doing these kind of practice runs to relax, even though there's no race scheduled. It's just fun to boot up the game and see how fast you can play it under time pressure. Sounds weird, but that's kind of where I'm at. Draft racing, in case you don't know, it's basically a speedrunning contest between usually 4 players, but beforehand they have to draft a team and only using the characters you pick. So, for example, I pick Heath, no one else can pick Heath, and they cannot use him. The only characters you can use besides the characters you pick are free ones like Hector, Ninian, and Athos. It will cover exactly who that is and where they are free when we're actually playing, because the video is going to be plenty long. And lately we've been trying to figure out which character makes it for the best carry. And by we, I mean me, Raisins, and the rest of the draft racing community. So like Justin, Don is very heavily involved, Castle when he's there. And we're trying to figure out who makes the best carry, who's the best main character of these races. And that means the character does the most work throughout the whole thing. You're going to see Hector do a lot of work in pretty much every kind of draft race, but we're also really focused heavily on characters that can long-term work very well. And that includes Heath, it includes Hawkeye, it includes Florina. These are the units that are usually picked in the first round, and after that you just kind of pick characters around those units to make sure that they can do the work. So for this run, I'm using the team that you're seeing on the screen at the bottom. It says Justin because this is the team that he drafted in the last televised combined FE7 plus FE8 draft race, where we picked characters for both games. You don't really have to memorize all the characters in there. The most important ones are Heath, of course, Isadora, and then Kent and Lowen, and pretty much everyone else is irrelevant. And if you enjoy this kind of video, then I'm happy to make more of them with, for example, Florina or Hawkeye or other possibilities, or even something stupid like a very bad carry. I think that's everything we need to say to introduce this. Is there anything I forgot?
I think we could have added some details as to like what exactly a carry does or what makes for a good carry. I think you mentioned the most popular carries at the moment are probably in this order: Heath, Florina, Fiora/Pent, and Hawkeye.
Yeah.
I think those are the most popular ones right now.
Yes.
And that would probably be what the first four picks look like. But we can get into the details of why exactly Heath in particular is a good carry.
Yeah.
As we go through the run, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that during this run.
Oh, for sure. There's plenty of enemy phase to go through. So how about we get into it?
Let's go.
So first of all, Matthew is free in this chapter, and Hector's going to be free for the rest of the game. So the first actual half of the run, or almost half the run, focuses on Hector and getting him through chapters as soon as possible. And that involves him killing everything and getting a bunch of levels.
Sure. Also of note, we did do the options, but that's kind of boring. There is a little piece of text in the top left that says paused or active depending on we go. This is an RNG scrambler. It's become pretty standard practice in draft races. What it means is that every time it says active, it's just burning an RN, a random number, every single frame. It's still technically the same string of RNs, so in a way it's still deterministic RN, but it's so hard to manipulate that it's not even worth the effort. So this is effectively using a true random number generator, and not the same easy to manipulate one that GBA usually uses. So no RNG manip is allowed in these runs.
Yes. Also something important that I did forget, we're playing on Tony mode, which is also kind of known as like GBA's fixed mode, which means characters do not have random level ups, but they are leveling up roughly according to their averages. Every time the game sees that a character would average, I think 0.5 over like what they currently have, they will level up that stat, which means that you probably see a lot of alternating good and bad level ups for characters that like grows around the 50s. But which means I know, for example, that Hector is always going to hit the benchmarks that he needs to at some point. This is to both increase frequency in practicing without getting like screwed Hectors and Heaths all the time. Like imagine you get like 15 chapters in and then suddenly your Heath gets really bad level ups. You're never going to get a good, like a great level up for this. Like I'm trying to do is PB hunting. Which is just basically just trying to get a run under 2 hours. And I think eventually, if I played without this Tony mode thing, I would eventually just get a real blessed Hector and real blessed Heath and just get it based off that. I'd rather get it after averages than after blessings, but it also protects me against Drew and have to discard a whole run like an hour in. So it's just kind of like a time save. But if we're doing a real race, then that is not on it. We have to play with the level ups we get.
It also somewhat protects against too good RNG bless, because sometimes that can be even just as worse for practice. Like you're practicing a draft race and, you know, Hector has like 17 speed or something. It's like, well, this is not useful. Like, this isn't going to happen in a run. So, although, you know, sometimes it is useful and you ought to know what you should do in that situation. So I'm very curious because let's talk about what's actually going on the screen right now. Because this is kind of a different strat to what I've seen out of you guys before. In particular, there's like a different Hector positioning. But I think it's in order to draw the mercenary south to Marcus.
Yeah. So I want Hector to take out the Pegasus Knights as soon as possible, and this movement gets him very close. It's kind of an awkward position because it's like between a bunch of forests while he's on a plain tile. It's very not intuitive, and I think it could actually be improved, but this is what I'm used to, so I just kind of do it all the time. But what it does very well is it bakes the Pegasus Knights. He's like +1 strength to one of Kyoto's with the Wolf Beal. It also draws the Mercenary South, like you said, and next time I'm going to put Marcus in the spot using the Iron Lance, which is, I think, the overall most accurate weapon to take out a Pegasus Knight and the Brigands and the Mercenary. I think what most people do is they move Hector south and fight the Mercenary 1v1 with the Wolf Beal, which is very inaccurate and annoying. It's like 60 hits something. It's not terrible, but I think it goes wrong a lot of the time. And I'd rather have Marcus take care of that Mercenary because he one-shots with the Iron Lance. And if he fails to kill the Brigand because of Weapon Triangle, I could just kill him with... well, I guess I'd have to move Marcus back or something. I don't even know. That's pretty bad, actually, when that happens. If you have like Dorcas or Lowen, you can finish him off that way. But of course, because this is a good run, that doesn't happen. And then Hector, he does have to like kind of live with this Archer and his Brigand hitting him for like 2 turns straight, and he's not even doing the hand axe thing because that's so inaccurate. It's never gonna hit anyway. It just waits more time. I'm just waiting for Marcus to get over there. And this positioning on Hector also stops that Brigand that's near Marcus from moving at all until he's ready to suicide into Marcus. So that also saves some time.
That's right, yeah, because normally that Brigand is so annoying, going on the mountain, going on the peak, going everywhere. It's like you can never hit that guy. So I actually really like this. I like this move. I was wondering if that Brigand at the southwest just didn't move for a moment, because I almost always just bunga onto him with Hector.
Yeah, he doesn't move. And the Hana's Brigand, you can stop him from moving too, but then you have to move Hector south. And then this way you can also bait Sagan into hitting Marcus like this. And then all I have to do now is like, okay, I just check if Hector has enough HP to survive him. And if he does, I just move Marcus back and Sagan suicides onto Hector. If Hector misses, you can go back and hand axe him. If that misses too, then you just kill him with Marcus, because then it gets dangerous.
This gives us like the maximum number of chances for a Hector boss kill on Zagan, which is really good because now, you know, that's more Hector XP.
Yeah.
Tends to be beneficial.
Yeah, Hector is very important for the early game, and he has to get as much XP as possible without costing time. So this chapter is all about that river that Hector is walking towards. You can get there in, I believe, 4 or 5 turns, or you can get to the gate and season in 4 or 5 turns, and saving a turn is actually like a whole minute saved. And there's only one way that we know of doing it without suicide on another character, and that's by having either Lowen, Oswin, or one of the fighters rescue Marcus and then give him to Hector, and then Hector drops him across the river, because Hector can walk on river tiles, but only one at a time, as you're about to see. So I sent Marcus to the bottom right for a second to kill some enemies that would move otherwise. Then I just plop him right back up with Lowen. Well, Hector slowly moves across the river. This is something that every draft racer does and has been doing for a while. If you don't have access to one of those carrying units like the fighters or Lowen here, you have to suicide Matthew. That will give Marcus a better starting position this chapter, and that also works.
Yeah, you can suicide the Matthew, you can get a better starting position. Or I think in this particular strat, you can also just wait a turn. Like I said, you lose a minute out of it. But generally speaking, if you lost a minute because you didn't draft someone who can do this, you probably should have drafted someone who gets you a minute elsewhere, right? So yes. Like, let's not forget, you should be drafting your characters intelligently and intentionally. And that means that, like, most of the time if you don't have something, it's because it had an opportunity cost that you deemed too great. So I'm curious to shopping. What exactly did you buy up there?
So I sold a lockpick from Matthew, because even though I drafted him, it's only to get the Speedwing from Zoldam, and other than that, I don't really need anything out of him. So I sold the lockpick because it's easy money, and I actually need quite some money across the whole thing compared to other racers.
That's something I never thought to do. But as soon as I saw you put the lockpick on Hector, I was like, wait a minute, did you just misclick that? And then you put the red gem over 2. I was like, oh, how did... Of course, that's what you do.
Yeah, and I sold the red gem from chapter 11, and I bought, I think, 3 hand axes and a javelin.
3 hand axes and a javelin.
Yeah,
It's
kind
true.
of
Oh, you need
FE7
the spare
stuff.
javelin for something.
Yeah,
I guess I'll see where you use the javelin.
Yeah, I think usually we always bought like a couple hand axes here and that's it. But I actually found a spot in the next couple chapters where having a full use javelin is handy. It's chapters 15 and 16 basically. Well, 14 and 16 I should really say.
For sure. And this is 14, so
yeah,
let's talk about it here. So secret book on Hector, of course. We used to sell these, but it turns out skill very good. So
yeah, Hector has to hit so many sketchy hits that +4 hit across the whole game is way more valuable, especially when we get to Uhai. That +4 hit is really going to pay dividends. For this chapter, I really meticulously managed Marcus' inventory so that he does exactly what he needs. This chapter, he needs a javelin to kill that mercenary that you can see on the screen on turn 1, and he just kind of needs one to range for a lot of the rest of the chapter. I have Matthew deployed here, not for thievery, but for fighting, because there's a couple pirates that he's pretty good against. This is something that he can do, but Eliwood is also pretty good at doing it, and so is Lowen. If you have Hector do it alone, you can probably still do it, but you end up in a risk of losing a lot of time. Speaking of that, the archer that Marcus fights on turn 1 enemy phase is a really big pain because he goes in a forest, and if you miss either hit, he runs off to use a vulnerate for 2 turns straight, and then he will probably go after Urk unless you put Hector in his range, and that can cost a lot of time. But
he's so annoying.
Yeah. Fortunately, that didn't happen here.
Yeah, and you pretty much want to always attack that mercenary from the north. So like you're gonna have to fight that archer like that. I will say too, Mekkah, you mentioned inventory management earlier. Inventory management is a huge part of good planning in these runs, and in particular shopping management too. So this Marcus inventory in particular is pretty much exactly what you want. What did we pick up? It was hand axe, javelin, silver lance, and a vulnerary, and nothing more. You actually want the 4th open slot to pick up Eric's silver lance here.
Yeah, without having to discard anything, which is not just good because you don't want to discard things in general, but because it costs time to do so. Draft racing used to be very, very improvised based, where we just kind of, go fast, don't think about anything. But because we've done so many of them at this point, they are more of a planned affair. And because of that, I'm able to plan inventories for pretty much the whole game and figure out what I need for every chapter. And this is the chapter where that really pays off. It seems a bit wasteful to use the silver lance on all these weak enemies that I could probably just one round with an iron something. But I need to use a javelin next turn to counter the nomad, and in order to pick off Eric next enemy phase, I need to use a silver lance now to weaken him enough. And also, I don't have that many better places to use the silver lance anyway. You pick up 2, and you actually get your second one this chapter.
Yeah, so you have the 2 silver lances, and I think if you were using a weaker carry, or let's say a carry with less strength, such as Florina, then maybe there would be a case to be made for really meticulously saving the silver lance here. Mm-hmm. But I'm of the school where, I'll use silver lance on brigands. I don't care.
Yeah, I should probably have used the silver lance in chapter 13 as well for a couple things where I didn't. I like the iron axe because it has a couple of other random advantages, but you lose some time. Could you talk about the pirates at the bottom?
Oh god, these guys with the healing AA?
Yes.
Oh no. Dude, so these pirates at the bottom, they have healing AA, which is to say if they get to 30% or less HP, then they will run off to forts in order to heal. And usually about the time when they do that is the time when it starts raining. So if you knock a pirate down to, I think it's 6 HP or less on this map. Is it 6 HP?
Roughly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Roughly 6 HP. You can figure it out.
I will say, I think it's only one pirate that does that all the time. Either that or the other pirate just never gets in range from me. But I think it's the only, the second pirate that you fight is the one that really caused the trouble. The first one usually just suicides into me anyway, even if I don't manage to kill him at first opportunity. I missed a soldier though with Hector's, I think, iron axe earlier, or actually the hand axe, I think he missed with that. So now I'm trying to figure out, can I keep Matthew safe? Because I also really want to bait over that cavalier in the bottom, and it starts raining next turn. So if I don't bait him over now, we're going to be too late. But I just swapped to the wolf beal so that Hector can bait him. And this way, even if Matthew gets hit by the soldier like he did, he doesn't die to the cavalier. Because usually I bait the cavalier with my sword unit. So this was an improvisation that actually works always. I think I just figured out a better strategy in this one.
Just going cavalier. I mean, it ended up working out really well. And I quite like the Matthew. Like he said, he did really well down there. I think there was maybe a large risk of Matthew deaths, so an improvement could be something that just improves the reliability upon that. And by the way, notice too, there was still a possibility of Marcus death too, even though we're playing Hector Normal Mode. Turns out Marcus needed to swallow, 2 vulns in order to not die there?
But I think if he swallows those 2 vulns, if you have him ready for him, he can never die, because there's only so many enemies that can do damage to him. A lot of enemies actually do 0 or 1. He's been close to death for me a lot of times. If he gets hit by Eric twice, it actually looks very dangerous for him, but I don't think it's that dangerous when you have 2 vulns.
So this is a funny strat. Lyn has a long bow, but is polite enough to not use it.
Thanks, mage. That's why the split is called Thanks, mage.
I know. Yeah, that mage right there who was it who pointed out on this map, like, wait a minute, if you just go here, Lyn just dies. I don't know if it was me or Don.
I know that we used to just put Hector on a throne and not do anything at all. Just get rid of his weapons, and it turns out, just kill the Lyn and we're done. That's it.
Yeah, just like act all clever. It's like, oh, we're not doing a whole lot, but it turns out the enemies are.
Yeah.
But
something neat and small you might notice in this chapter is I spent a lot of the javelin uses last chapter. It was on low uses, but not quite out, so I could use it to counter stealing for more accuracy. And then it broke like halfway through the enemy phase. And I used the hand axe, which I think OHKOs some enemies like the Nomad and the Mage that normally would not get OHKO'd by the javelin. Here I attacked the wrong enemy. I attacked the soldier instead of the thief for an amazing 5 milliseconds of time loss.
Oh no, yeah. Now you got to go and target the thief again.
Yeah, it's very sad. At least it's not an enemy that's like runs off and heals or something. That mercenary, I think, is the main cause for time loss in this chapter now, because there's nothing else that can really go wrong. It's just, please, Hector, hit this guy. This is...
You gotta hit.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I like having Iron Axe and Hector. I don't know if you don't do it, because I've heard people go like, I just use the Wolf Beal, but I think you can use the Wolf Beal against better targets if you conserve it in situations like this. So that's why I give him an Iron Axe at the start of 14.
Oh, 100%. I think if I spend a lot of Wolf Bale, it's in chapters 11 and 12 where Hector doesn't have any access to an Iron Axe whatsoever.
Yeah.
But yeah, from 13 on, pretty much Hector should be using more Iron Axe for sure, and less Wolf Bale, because like it's just as accurate. So
yeah,
it's exactly as accurate as the Wolf Bale, and you don't really need the extra might from Wolf Bale very often.
Yeah, and what's it called? The hand axe is significantly less accurate at this point in the game, so you don't want to use that if you can use something more accurate. So this is a chapter that's the biggest difference between Heath and Florina for quite a while. This is where Florina trains, and meanwhile Heath is like, okay, let's go Hector Marcus, just go through the whole map and save a bunch of time. This is where you got to start gaining time on Florina if you compare the splits. It's also a chapter where we get the whole Lindis league. That's what I call them to in all Raisins. And I use them to stave off a couple mercenaries that would otherwise run towards Lyn and do annoying things, and just shop a little bit. I think I used to buy, or we all used to buy, like 1 million hand axes javelins here, but it turns out you don't really need that many until later, and there's a better shopping opportunity later. So I think I buy maybe like 1 javelin.
Oh, really? I think I still do, but I guess maybe repositioning these guys over to the shop is technically a time loss.
Yeah.
Albeit a very minor one. So we can see Florina going down to the village. Even if you have an undrafted unit, they can still visit villages. By the way, I think somewhere in this video you're going to post the rule set that we use.
Yes, in the description, yes.
If there's ever a quirk in the rule set that we need to point out, then we'll make sure to point it out. Sometimes it can be a bit unclear why it is that the rules, say something like that, but that's what we're here for, to hopefully enlighten you.
Yeah, it's probably also good to point out that the whole squad that's in the bottom right of the Lindis League is completely free. Florina is not free, but she can visit villages even if she's undrafted. But Ken, Sane, Will, and Lyn are completely free to do combat if you want to. Normally, undrafted units are not allowed to see combat. Or rather, they can't counterattack, I should say. They can't attack. They are allowed to see combat if they don't fight back.
Yeah, no, they're not allowed to attack or counterattack. But this is a case where it's like, these guys always come under attack, so just let them be free for this map.
Yeah, I mean, we could just have everyone take a penalty instead. That'd be kind of mean.
You have to draft one of these people. By the way, Lyn is draftable, so she's not free. I think we didn't mention that with Eliwood as well, but Eliwood is also not free. He is draftable. So
yeah, we used to have Lords free at some point, but it's just not necessary. You're not force deployed as much to warrant that. But Hector is force deployed so much and so important, you have to make him free. We're just like, the rules have been evolving over time to make sure that they're fun for everyone. Try to make drafted units matter as much as possible. That's about it. So this is a strategy I've mostly stolen like this from Raisins, because draft racing really is a collaborative effort. The idea is to drop Hector there, not so that because he has to do combat or anything, but just to like not wait down Marcus anymore so he can kill the enemies near. This is what I used that javelin for that I bought, because I think these cavaliers have swords, and if you use the hand axe you're very inaccurate, but if you use like a one range weapon you don't counter the archer. So I use my full use javelin here to get rid of those calves.
Yeah, very clever. I know one of them has a sword. Obviously, the Horse's Lair guy is...
Oh, yeah.
He's the Horse's Lair guy, so... The hand axe, the javelin are pretty much of equal power against him. It doesn't really matter. But also another reason it's fine to drop Hector is that Hector actually has enough movement to get to the throne. And I'm not gonna lie, this will somewhat be a common theme as we go through this race, is that you don't oftentimes need as much movement as you think you do, or you don't often need as much units moving as you think you do. For example, I think if you had not planned out this run or did not know exactly where it is that Hector needs to go or when, you might feel tempted to leave him on Marcus for a while longer and try to drop him further in like this. But it turns out that's not necessary at all. So if you plan out your moves, it turns out the movement set becomes a bit less important.
Yes, and also by dropping Hector here, we allow Marcus to use a vulnerary in this turn, whereas otherwise he would be dropping Hector next to the throne. And that's important because the boss, Bowker, actually hits him really hard. I think he almost two-shots Marcus, especially when he's holding the Silverlance with no weapon trial advantage. Silverlance does two-shot the guy, so hopefully you hit him twice and you can just seize next turn and you're done.
Sure, and I think Marcus almost always gets a level here, which is kind of sad. But,
yeah,
you know.
barely, yeah. Yeah, there's not much for Ryan's in Marcus's XP, I don't think, unless he like crits Sagan, which happens every now and then he has like a bunch of extra XP. I think he also always gets like an X rank level up somewhere. That's probably going to be cut out at some point where we're really getting into minute details.
For sure. But the general idea of this strategy is, don't do a whole lot. Just get yourself to the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say now, that's generally the big picture strategy of draft races. Don't figure out how much your units can do. Figure out how little your units can do, and then do that. Because as it turns out, not doing a whole lot goes really fast.
Yes.
So,
I don't think we mentioned this yet, by the way, but Marcus was free for the first couple chapters, but until now. Now he's no longer free. Now I have to undeploy him. I actually forgot to do that right away, so I'm just gonna, yeah, there you go, fix that. So now it's gonna be Hector against the world until I get Heath and Isadora. You might wonder, how the hell will we survive with just Hector? And the answer is mostly just use Hector. He's really good. But it does mean he has to walk with his short, stubby legs throughout this entire chapter on his own. You might think I'm going to use Kenton Sane or Kenton Lowen, actually is my calf duo in this part, to help him out, but they're actually just going to chill off in the corner to do something else. And that means that this chapter is going to be entirely reliant on Hector and his stats.
Oh yeah, this is the funny one where where you had some silly RNG happen midway through, right?
Yeah, but it's a different run, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
So it's still new. This is actually a very, very different run. I'll see if you can notice what's so amazing. I mean, you'll probably be able to tell throughout, but this is an insane chapter 17 nonetheless.
For sure. Chapter 17 used to be the giant run killer because everyone wanted to train all their units here and get the XP. So people would bring like 4 units and they die and you'd have to reset. And
that, and it just wanted to use other units to like help out, because you figure, if you use more units, you'll get through faster, right? And you can, it seems kind of slow to have Hector move through here on his own, but it turns out it's actually the fastest way to do it without Marcus.
Right, and part of the way it's the fastest way to do it, and also in general, part of the reason why it's best to use exactly one carry unit, in this case it'll be Heath as opposed to a whole bunch of units, is that if you look at this map, it's basically, how quickly can you get through all of these combats that you see between Hector and the throne? So it's 15-ish units that we have to kill. And what you want are units who, when they get in a combat, they kill the enemy. Because anytime you get in a combat and fail to kill the enemy, that'll be 5 to 6 seconds completely spent not advancing your position in the chapter. So Hector, on the other hand, pretty much every time he gets in a combat with these people who manage to kill the enemy, he won't run around these nomads, but practically no one does. So, you just kind of take that. But all the rest of the enemies he one rounds pretty safely. Even though he's only moving forward 5 squares per turn, it's really not that huge a time loss because you just move Hector and then you've moved Hector. Your turn is done. You don't have to waste any more time on player phase. So that's why Hector in particular is very well suited to this. He tends to end combats whenever he starts them, and that saves you the most time over the course of the run. Especially if you can do that very consistently in every single chapter, you'll save so much time.
Yeah. He just got blocked off. This is the one spot where I think having another unit here to free the way for him would be helpful. And it's one thing that Florina actually helps with if you have her, because she's still training here, but she can actually contribute a bit to Hector's reliability with support, and also by killing enemies that are just getting in his way here. But you'll notice that so far, Hector's been done a tremendous job at killing everything. Usually he's missed at least once or twice, but so far his accuracy has been on point. He has not missed a single attack. But let's attack Raven with a hand axe with 47 hit.
Good idea.
And just hit him anyway.
Hold on.
And then we get to
with 47.
And then we just hit him again, and he's just dead. Like that.
Ooh,
No
nice.
Raven golf.
No Raven Golf.
And then his archer, nope, he dies too. No missing here. No sir, no missing.
Okay, but you can't. There's no way you hit the steel bow both times though. Like, come on. If you hit the steel bow both times too, then I'm calling the referee. It's like, check his ROM, dude.
Spliced ROM. We also killed this archer. We don't have to. We don't need the XP, but I want the chest key somewhere. This is a 5-use chest key I can use later. I don't actually have a lot of experience with chest key strategies, but I heard it was faster, so this is just one of the things I'm trying out in this run.
Yeah. Oh, what?
And this is
do you want to? Oof. Did you forget to like equip a hand axe?
Yes. Particularly, I have a 2-use hand axe equipped, and I will switch to an iron axe. So the perfect, not imperfect switch here from weapons. I'm going from a hand axe against the fighter to an iron axe against the archer. One of the bigger mistakes in the run.
I did notice that. Frankly, as soon as you did, I was like, wait a minute. You need the iron axe in the other slot, but
yeah. Kind of bad. You see now the purpose of the bottom units, Lowen and Kent, instead of helping Hector, they're at the bottom blocking reinforcements. The upper cav, Kent is blocking a cavalier from spawning on that tile. The nomad is what we call a walk-on reinforcement, and he will always spawn no matter what you do. Like if you put like 8 units in that corner, he'll move right past those 8 units and spawn on space right next to them. So the only way to get rid of him is to kill him, and that's why we block him in with Lowen and Kent like that. There are 3 of such reinforcements, and after that they'll be done. I'm gonna kill 2 of them, and then the last one I'm just gonna leave be, because why kill him? He doesn't do anything. He can't do anything. I'm feeding it to Kent because he does have a purpose later on, so if I'm gonna give someone levels, it might as well be him. It used to be that I would use opportunities like these to actually actively level up Kent whenever I could, and then promote him for a later purpose. But because I have Isadora and I don't need anything else besides 1 8-move unit, I've actually stopped doing that. If I don't have Isadora, which we might get into at some point, then I would actually consider training Kent up here if I had drafted him. But right now, I just need Hector for the early game and I need Heath for the late game. That's basically the plan of the whole thing.
For sure. I think I would maybe raise a slight objection to always practicing with Heath Isadora. I think if you were just playing FE7, that's a pretty unrealistic team to pick. But I do remember that this pick is from a slightly older meta, and it's also from a combined FE7 FE8 race.
Absolutely.
So there's no telling what else all happened here. Other people who maybe would have picked Isadora perhaps instead prioritize picking FE8 units during that time. So Justin in this race was actually able to snag Heath and Isadora. But Isadora being just simply so valuable and Heath being one of the earlier picks.
Yeah.
I don't quite know how realistic it is to get back to it, but that's such a minor nitpick. And at the end of the day, like, it's still a good practice run. And like, I'm so really excited to see what you do with it. Yeah,
the strategies will not change a whole lot if I had Wrath instead, who I think is realistic to draft instead of Isadora. They would only change a couple chapters. The run will be slower, but I would do almost everything else the same if I had another character instead of Isadora. She's mostly useful for 8 move and then her joining chapter, and that's about it. But this chapter, for example, would not change a single thing.
The Kaelin soldiers stealing the night crest for you. Once upon a time, way back in the day, people would just absolutely lose their hair in like 30 minutes of time over that night crest. Remember that?
Especially because they would like try to promote, like there's 3 early cav units, so you probably want to promote them. And then Oswin as well always wants that night crest. So it's understandable why people were stressing out over it. But turns out if you just move Hector, you could probably get it. It's just you don't need to in this case.
The next night crest is chapter 22, and that's probably about the time when you want to promote your units anyway. I remember, I think it was way back in the day, we were all, following the usual advice, right? Like, try to promote your units early. And I think it was sometime I was doing a practice, and I promoted my Sane at level 12, and he was going into the Uhi map with like 9 strength, 9 speed. I was like, there's got to be a better way.
Yikes. Yeah, but if you look at the splits right now, you can see I'm now 2 minutes ahead of my PB this early. Because Hector was just an absolute god in chapter 17, he hit everything he needed to. So now I'm stressing out over the boss of this chapter, Zoldam, who has a Lunatome. I'm not really stressing out. I'm like, okay, if he crits me, whatever, so be it. This is a chapter that's probably the least practiced one. Nice armory check. This is where I'm like, okay, I need to steal the speed wings from Zoldam with Matthew without my Hector getting killed. And I don't know if it's necessary here, but I have a habit of deploying Kent here to help out Matthew. But I think I could path out a better strategy where I don't need to. But right now, this is what I'm going with. And he actually does something in the chapter that I think I couldn't do without deploying him. So curious to see how you'll find my strategies for that. It is like a semi-turn by turn, but it's mostly memorized.
I'm really looking forward to it too. I do know my usual approach is actually to just turn 1, pick up Matthew with Hector, and it's like, oh no, how do you like You know, how are you going to fight the Pegasi with that? It's like, yeah, Hector one-shots everything anyway. It doesn't need to double.
Yeah. The
But
reason I don't do that is because it will drop Hector's reliability by a ton. He will stop doubling, so if he misses, he no longer has a second attempt, and then he also lowers the skill to the point where he has more of a chance of missing. So that's the reason I don't go with that strategy.
probably very prudent then. So, but this does make a very risky chapter because I'll just say it right now. Like, Zoldem, if Zoldem crits you, and he basically has a 12% chance to crit you no matter what. If Zoldem crits you, he's killing whatever unit he hits. And most of the time it's killing Hector, which is game over, or he's hitting someone really important like Florina. And like you can't just let Florina die and be like, yeah, maybe I'll continue the rest of the run. No, that's a reset.
Yeah.
Like,
No, absolutely.
you got to keep going here. So,
I mean, so if you don't have Matthew, you can just be way less prudent about this. You just go for Zoldem as soon as possible with Hector. You just move him 5 tiles every turn, get to Zoldem, and then if you kill Zoldem, the map ends. It's over. It says it's a defend map, but you can also kill Zoldem to end the map. But I want the speed wing for Heath to make him as good as possible. I'm not sure how necessary the speed wing is. Like, I know how much speed he gets because it's, you know, Tony mode, fixed mode. I know how much speed he's going to get. But I think there are some things he doubles with the speed wing that he doesn't double without. And in a run where you don't have the patch that, you know, makes me have average stats, where you don't have fixed mode, you want the speed wing to increase reliability, because there's a chance either your Hector or your Heath gets speed screwed, and the speed wing will fix that instantly, which is super valuable when you're actually racing.
yeah, I think in this case, probably 75% of the time, the speed wing is actually going to go on Hector, because Hector, wait with Hector. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so you can hand axe Zoldem this turn, but you have a higher chance of missing, and as a result, you have a higher chance of getting, you know, eating a crit somewhere along the way because of that. Fortunately, most of these enemies still don't get to attack Hector. Now I get to use my Iron Axe to finish off Zoldem. It does cost a little bit of time at slightly higher reliability. If I had to reset here because of a miss, it would be much worse than his couple seconds wasted. But if you want to get the lowest time possible, you just bunga into him with a hand axe and just hope for the best.
Oh, for sure. Because I think if you literally just pick up the chapter and go, it takes about a minute save to save. And if you save your preps, which if you are doing that strat, you probably should because there's a decent chance you reset. Then it takes an additional 50 seconds on a reset. So for example, Mekkah, you got out of there in about like 3 minutes 20. If you only had Hector and wasn't concerned about stealing the speed wings, you could still die to Zoldem once and get out of there in about 1 minute 50. Which, by the way, is not to say that Mekkah's strategy was bad. It wasn't. It was really good because he got the speed wing. But
yeah, speed wing costs time. Basically, is the lesson. And then, you know, Lunar Crit also costs like time. But like, fortunately, the one great thing about playing Tony mode is you know you're gonna have a Hector with at least 9 speed going into this chapter. He's gonna end up at like 11 at the end of his leveling career at Unpromoted. And that's great for Zoldem because that's the threshold for doubling him. It's also great for the boss of this chapter, Uhai, because that means you don't get doubled by Uhai. Uhai is the other run killer. It's really Zoldem's not really a run killer, but chapter 17 really is a run killer, and Uhai really is another one. This chapter is hell when you're not doing... We're doing the thing where you're just moving like 5 units across the field trying to get through it. And you get to Uhai, and he has 1 to 3 range and a killing edge. He can crit you instantly. End your chapter, you have to reset a long one. So fortunately, we found ways to optimize it. It's still a bit luck-based, but I think this is the best it gets for draft racing.
Yeah, the luck is less so much, is Uhai going to kill my unit with a killing edge? That's still, the threat of that still exists, but it's very much mitigated these days, and more so, how many attacks is it going to take before I finally hit Uhai? So, you know, you just kind of get through these idiots here. I know to start on the forest, I guess that's to like try and sandbag their approach up there and make it harder for them to reach you in time. Like, I guess you're just trying to keep those units off of Hector's back.
Yeah, I actually don't have this one pathed out to like, I know where I'm moving every turn. I'm just kind of improvising every time I do it, but I've done it so many times that I have a path semi-memorized. I mostly just want the enemies off the forests, and I don't really care if I have one. And I want to make progress, obviously.
It's kind of curious, the inventory, because I think this is where you do something differently than I do, and I'm kind of curious to see if it's like something you came up with and you definitely know what to do. I usually just have Dart dump all those things in Convoy, and I preset up Hector's inventory beforehand, so there's no Dart Hector trade. But here you're keeping a torch. I'm kind of curious, do you find, like, is there anything particular about Dart's inventory that's really good here for Hector, or?
It's a combination of both. So I need Dart to not have an inventory so he doesn't like do that thing. That's why you dump his stuff in the convoy, and that's why I traded to Hector, because he's not free. So he's only allowed to see combat if he doesn't counterattack, and he can use it to hold up the enemies here. And then I need Hector to have a hand axe to counter nomads down here, and I could use one of mine, but why not use darts, right? Because it's free. I don't need the steel axe for anything. The torch, I think it allows me to refuel Uhai a turn early, and just hit him with the hand axe a turn early, or miss him with the hand axe early. And you know, it's there. Why not make use of it? That's my reason here. Hector usually just, for some reason, I never miss these nomads with Hector, even though he's hitting on a forest. But now they're gone. But yeah, you can see right now I can't see Uhai. But if I use a torch now, actually, it doesn't matter in this case with the way I moved, so I should probably remember this path so I can do it again. But sometimes I end up like 4 or 5 tiles away, and on this turn I will be able to move in range of Uhai and attack him with my hand axe.
Yeah, it's easy to like miss a nomad somewhere along the way and then get blocked off, and you don't really know what the consequences of that is going to be.
That's a good point. There is variability. But yeah, this is a strategy for Uhai. It's not reliable, but it's about as reliable as it gets, and you could try to make a more reliable one. But you end up taking longer, and then if it goes wrong, which it always can, then you still end up being screwed. But mine goes well. But let me back it up a bit and like explain what happened here. Uhai starts with the Killing Edge equipped, and if you try to hit him with a hand axe with that, you're not going to hit ever. But if you attack him from range, he will also switch to range, use a short bow, and that way you have about like 40 hit with the hand axe. And then if you hit him, you can then finish him off with a Wolf Beal. Of course, if you miss the Wolf Beal, then he'll switch to his Killing Edge and probably try to kill you. You probably survive, but you still have to vuln up, go back from range, use the hand axe, and repeat the process. And meanwhile, the other enemies catch up to you and probably murder you. So it's a really difficult boss. It's hard to do reliably. One of the spots for Florina is much better than Heath, because Heath doesn't exist, but Florina can provide Hector with the support and an additional chance to hit Uhai with the Horse Slayer and finish him off.
For sure. I'm very curious to see what you do on this map, because this is another map where having our flunkies deployed, as we so affectionately call them, actually helps out a lot. There are a few moments in FE7 draft where your Hector or your carry are just not enough. There's like a combat that you need to do. There are a few moments like that, and this is one of them right now. There's this sniper on the left side, which is an archer on hard mode. It's very funny. Like, we got to deal with a silverbow sniper. The other people just have to deal with like an ordinary old archer. But you have your units arrayed in such a way. I'm sure we're about to see a very funny strat occur. By the way, Elliowood is still in a starting square. Yeah, Elliowood's still in a starting square. He can stay there. He's totally safe. The Armor Knight won't move to get him. So
yeah,
just anyone who starts this map.
Yeah, Hector is specifically positioned so that he gets rid of the longbow archer that would otherwise keep moving and maybe hit me across the whole map. He gets rid of 2 knights that would otherwise move to my lords who are force deployed and maybe die if I don't do something about it. But that sniper can still threaten them and cause a game over on Lyn or Elliowood, so we have to do something about him. That is why the flunkies are here. This is a strat I got from Raisins, actually, where we make sure that the sniper goes against the wall, but can't attack anyone this turn, and then we just surround him and stop him from doing anything at all. And I've actually been considering, like, I take him down with attacks from Kent and Lowen, and if Matthew still had a sword, I would do that too, but I disarmed him for a pirate ship and never got one sword back onto him. I'm actually considering whether it might be better to just not attack him at all throughout the whole map, because I don't care about Kent's levels anyway, and just block the archer and just say, all right, we're done with this map at the bottom, just move Hector now.
That's true. I mean, I guess there's like maybe an argument to be made for the Pegasi, but it looks like Matthew's on that job anyway, so.
Yeah, I think if you're racing, you want to kill him, because then there is a risk of Hector just not, doing as well as mine is doing right now in the middle and just mowing through everything. Because if he gets blocked off for a while, then there is a chance of Pegasus Knights appearing from the bottom left. You can't block those. They're walk in or fly in, I guess, in their case. And if you don't kill Darren in time, Oh, okay, fair enough. But there's a chance you have to deal with them, and you can't do that with your unit still surrounded by a sniper. Like, you will probably get yourself killed, and you don't want to have to improvise through it. So I guess if you're like hunting for a personal best like I am here, then it's probably better to not kill the sniper, because you're gonna, like, for PB you want to finish the chapter soon anyway. But if you are just racing or just trying to do something average that will almost always work, then you should probably kill the sniper, because it will on average save you time and reduce risk.
Interesting Hector positioning here. Why do you move him 1 square up?
Because I'm an idiot and I don't know how to stop the troubadour from blocking me. I was hoping he would go in the forest, and it, honestly, if I map this out better, I can probably prevent him from going, because I know you have a strategy to stop him from blocking you, but he always blocks me because he's an asshole.
Yeah. I think if you sit on the forest and the troubadour is either going to go north of Hector or east of Hector, in which case you'll have an escape square.
Yeah, I don't remember why I have to move north of the forest here, because I know I like hand axe the boss Cameron out of my way.
It could just be a mistake, like those happen.
No, this is another one of those chapters, just like the Dread Isle, where I don't have my entire strategy planned out in advance. So it's more like this is what I always do. So every turn I make the move that seems the most sensible, and almost every time that will be the same. With one difference though, and that's this mage guy. This is something that Danan told me. If you just put a guide where I put Lowen, then he will attack you from the stairs where another mage is supposed to pop out. That's the first time I'm doing this, so I still don't know exactly what to do from here. Like, do I just keep Lowen there and like keep healing with a vulnerary and just keep stopping mages? But that's that, let's just move down, let's get done with it. I block one mage, I'm happy for now, and I'll just, try out more possibilities later, because I think you can block all the mages other than one without, losing a bunch of time in the process.
For sure, but it also not only does it mean that fewer mages spawn, but it also delays the whole process of the mages busting out of that door. Which sometimes, if your Hector's very bad, he can have a really slow time of dealing with these guys up here, and actually will need to turn around to deal with the mages. It gets to a point where like it's not safe enough to take on Darren with the mages right behind you. You actually just got to turn around and deal with one problem at a time. It's a huge time loss if you run into it. So it's actually very wise by Don.
Yeah, and then Darren is someone Hector will almost never double unless he has the speed wings on him, because Hector is going to have 11 attack speed on average, like mine, and I think you need 12 to double him, so that's usually not happening. It can happen, you need to be blessed by a little bit, but generally like a player phase plus enemy phase is pretty much optimal anyway, because then you could just seize on next turn as long as you hit twice. Ripple Gold, goodbye. See you later.
Ripple Gold, yeah. One day we'll figure out how to recruit him, but...
I mean, like Florina, Danan has been going left with Florina instead, like opening that door and going through that whole thing where the mages are, and then getting the short spear from the knight up there, and it might be faster because you just you don't fight the middle enemies, you just don't fight the boss and everything, you just block that middle part. So that's something that I'm curious about exploring. I don't think it will work for solo Hector though.
Hey, this is the map where we need to remember to get the Elysian Whip.
Oh yes, that's why my splits say Elysian Whip ? Because it's pretty important to promote Heath in time with the Elysian Whip. There are other whips you can get, but this is by far the fastest one, and it's still kind of out of the way. This is one where your notes came in very handy, Raisins, because I pretty much copied them turn by turn for almost the entire thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is one where the turn by turn I came up with actually requires that Hector have 11 speed, which is not the easiest to meet benchmark. It's very unlikely that you don't meet that. It's very unlikely that you meet a lot of benchmarks in this run, actually. It's not exactly easy to get things like, for example, 9 speed on Hector by the time he hits chapter 20, which is what you need in order to not get doubled by Uhai. It's what you need in order to double Zoldem. I think it's like a 94% benchmark. And once upon a time we looked at that, it's like, it's fine. And nowadays look at that, it's like, oof, we got to have a plan B.
Yeah, that's why I enjoy doing these runs, because a run that has a below average Hector in speed at that point, for example, will just never get a PB. And I'm happy to turn this into a not PB at some point and actually go for quote unquote real runs. Not that this is a world record that matters, but at this point I just want to have fun and do runs, and Tony Mode is great for that, because you always get a run regardless of getting screwed. Also, we should probably mention Ninian is free. Probably goes without saying, but everyone can use it at answer for pretty much every draft race.
Everyone can use the dancer. The only draft races where the dancers are draftable are the Tellius ones, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn right now. They're not raced that much. And maybe one day a change to the rules will be made there, but that is just a small piece of trivia. Pretty much every other draft race, the dancers are free.
Yeah, this turn by turn is really particular. I know you advise using the Steel Axe here, and I probably should do it. Just use Dart Steel Axe to kill that Brigand so he doesn't have a chance to poison you if he counterattacks. That could work. I use the Iron Axe for accuracy. Can come in handy in other spots as well. It might seem like a bit of a slow move. Why wouldn't I full move Hector Ninian most turns and just go bunga? But this protects Ninian from reinforcements and also makes it easier to get the Elysian Whip without getting in awkward spots with Eliwood and Ninian, and still kills the boss in a pretty timely fashion.
Right, exactly. It's the kind of thing where, and this is just a small thing in draft race, because Hector didn't actually need to move that far to get to the village. It's the kind of thing where, say you have a move and you need to move 8 tiles, or you need to move 6 tiles, say with a unit who has 5 move like Hector. Hector needs to move somewhere, and it's a 6 tile journey. I think it's pretty common for a newer player to look at that and say, well, let me move Hector 5 tiles, the next turn I'll move him 1. But you don't need to do that. You can just move him 1 tile this turn and then move him 5 tiles on the next. And usually when you do that, you aggro fewer enemies. If you go 5 tiles forward, you're aggroing 5 times as many enemies. So don't do that. Just lurk outside the range, go exactly as far back as you need to, and then go forward. It's another case where it's not about doing more, it's about doing less,
Mm-hmm.
if you can.
Yeah, antitoxin use real quick just to get rid of the poison. Nothing better to do this turn anyway, besides falling.
It's such a good item,
I
antitoxin
know,
in the
right?
run.
It's great. And then we bait Oleg, and hopefully we hit him because he has a killer axe. And if I don't hit him often enough, then he will maybe hit me. This guy doesn't kill Ninian. Even if he hits her, he's a poison axe. She's fine, but missing saves an animation. But yeah, hopefully we hit him. Please hit. All right, we got it. Oh, all right. That's not good.
Yes, sir. We have Ninian in the back.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We have Ninian. We'll be fine. I'm sure. I would Bob Pure Waters. Those are really good for later. Oh,
Kind of good.
Oh,
Okay, there we go.
That was scary. I'm not gonna lie. It was scary because I've been killed by the killer axe before. He can run around and kill you. There's tiles where you can go where you're more safe than that. This is another one of those raisin strats that's really good. Where you make sure you use the Isadora moment where having Isadora alone saves you like what 1 or 2 minutes over using Hector to kill a boss. Because this is another one of those defend chapters that you can end by killing the boss early. But it's also where we recruit Heath, you know, the guy who's in the title of the video. And we can start training him, but before he's trained, he can't really solo chapters yet, so we have to rely on Hector or Isadora to do the work for us. But thankfully, Isadora is really good in this chapter.
Yeah, really good. Once upon a time, it was like, you know, gosh, how do we get this unit to work? It's like, wait, she's kind of good, turns out. So
yeah, but you do have to be very particular about her inventory and her positioning, because if you do one thing wrong, which for example Justin experienced in the last race, it can completely fall apart and you can lose her, or you have to reset or something like that. So you do have to follow the plan almost exactly.
For example, don't do that. Apart. Yeah, don't do that. There's like the turn by turn I devised, like you have to trade Ninian to Isadora. You have to attack from 2 range on that thing rather than attacking from 1 range. Again, it's the kind of case where like maybe someone just starting out would be like, oh, I can move 8 squares. Let me move 8 squares. Don't do that, because then you're gonna be in range of this cav and this nomad.
Yeah, and you also get blocked off from going to the forest near the ballista. 2 tiles from left from the ballista right now. Which, I don't know why it happens, but it happens. I haven't looked into why, I just know it does. And then, you might wonder how we're recruiting Heath. Like, we're still far away from him, but we still have Ninian and Hector there, and Heath will just fly towards you. You don't have to really seek him out very aggressively.
Yeah, he'll come our way eventually, right?
Mm-hmm. And like, Ninian, for example, is another character that you don't need to use every turn if it doesn't add anything. Like this turn it just didn't dance at all. It saves the dancing animation. Like Hector doesn't need to move any further than what he did, so why bother dancing and watching that animation when you could save the time instead? And it's not like Ninian can help Isadora this turn either. She's already too far away. And here we get a Night Crest I would use on Kent or Sane if I had trained them, or Lowen if I trained him as a flunky, but I did not because they don't need to be trained.
We have Isadora, it's true. I think this map can be done pretty quickly just with Hector also recruiting Heath. It's not as quick as this Isadora turn by turn, but it can be done. So, but it generally does speak to the strategy of, you know, be prepared, use the free units for as much as you can, especially in this case Hector. He's just so good. But
for sure,
this map used to be very tricky. You know, it's like, it's pretty reliable.
It is a painful map to move turns on because there are a lot of enemies and also a lot of NPCs. But you know what? We also get Heath here, so it all makes up for it. We grab the Speed Wings right away. I actually don't think you have to use the Speed Wings this turn. I think we could have just attacked the fighter on player phase, for example, if you wanted to, or something like that. But I know your notes say Speed Wings, so I use the Speed Wings. I don't question it.
To be honest, that's the part of the turn by turn that I did not optimize, is what do you do with Heath. So everything else, everything related to Isadora, I got down like, it's very important you do exactly those things with Isadora, but anything related to Heath, that's like, there's probably some leeway.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, the run is going to change significantly. Before it has been, all right, it doesn't really matter where you get XP or anything, because Hector has been trained for a while now. So just do whatever it takes to get through chapters as soon as possible. But now we have to balance that goal with getting Heath as much XP as possible, because he's my carry. He has to do most of the combat. If I were to only continue using Hector and Isadora for the rest of the game, I would be significantly slower than if I got a lot of XP on Heath. And the sooner he gets that XP, the better, because he has to get it. Like there's no escaping it. So one way to get XP here is to kill the Thief here with the Axe Reaver. Thieves get a bit more XP than most other units, and also I get the Brave Axe this way, which I don't think I need. I think a lot of other people just skip it, but I find it so conveniently easy to get it, and it protects against the screwed Hector if you're not playing with Tony mode, that I just do it. And then we do a Halbert against Humans and hopefully hit him twice.
And we pray.
Yeah, because like 3% failure, I think is what it is.
It's 3% failure, but the failure is not that you miss Eubens. The failure is that Eubens actually just kills Isadora, which he needs to hit his spear twice or crit once. And I think I can't remember. It's somewhere around 80 to 85-ish% chance of success. So
yeah,
pretty good as it turns out.
Yeah, and as you can see, timer stopped. This is when I took a quick break because I was like, yo, I got to this point with a pretty good time. Let's continue that up. But first I need to go to the bathroom and chill. So we'll be right back as we grab the last bit of this part 1.
For sure.
All right, and we're back for the next part. Draft races, you can take a break, and you should take a break. Probably one of the best rule inventions we've done ever is just saying, okay, take a break for 15 minutes. If you take less than that, it will just be detracted from your time or get added to your time. And then, you should just take a break and take care of your own health. It's been really relieving.
Just take your time, take a break. It helps too if you get frustrated, if you need to check your notes, all this and that. You can't have your emulator running during the break, of course, or your GBA if you're playing on that somehow with like a camera pointed at it, I guess.
Yeah. Good old. Yeah, because this is also where I was like, okay, I need to like really make sure I know what I'm doing with this one, because this is a chapter that can definitely go wrong if you go about it the wrong way. A lot of units like Hawkeye are at the mercy of Pent in this chapter because he is responsible for a lot of the enemy clears in this route map. But Heath can do something about it if Pent gets stuck somewhere, which can happen when he uses Elixir and no longer finds himself in enemy range. And the sort of turn by turn that I've kind of come to experience helps with that. Isadora also very helpful for this map for clearing the enemies in the part that's not covered in sand. She doesn't like sand, it gets everywhere. But she has the inventory to take care of everything there. And Ninian is important to make sure that he stays alive with the help of, Ninian's Grace and just additional turns every now and then. So that's going to be the plan for this route map coming up.
Oh, duh. Of course he put Heath there. I was like, what are you doing with Heath? I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Of course that's what you do. It's the same thing when you got the Brave Axe the way you did. You were like, you always tell me about how you get the Brave Axe, and I saw you do it. It's like, of course that's what you do. Like,
yeah.
And now I feel foolish for never having gotten the Brave Axe before. It's like,
that's cute. I used Ninian's Grace on Heath. I wanted them to be positioned away from the enemy so that Ninian doesn't have to get in range. Her movement isn't very big. That mage in particular is very annoying to Ninian. I would do in the past is I would Ninian's Grace from closer up and then rescue with Hector, which is obviously less optimal. Now Heath is Ninian's Grace for a turn, which means he gets plus 10 defense and res effectively for the combat on the next enemy phase. And that's helpful for disposing of this archer. Now I will say, I think what I'm doing in this chapter is pretty unreliable. It's not always going to work because he's using like a 70-ish hit javelin on these mages and archers and try to kill them as fast as possible. He consumed the Speed Wing and the Angelic Robe to bolster his inventory, his durability, I mean. Mostly for long term, but it helps in this chapter as well. And then next turn he can fly back, use the Pure Water, and continue fighting here. But the more he misses here, the longer the chapter is going to take.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's always some inherent risk in training any of your flyers here. There's 2 archers, there's a bunch of mages. Like, either the archer is going to wreck Florina, Fiora, or the mages are going to wreck Heath. Like, there's no way getting around it. So,
definitely. So this is the turn where you go back, use a Pure Water, and then you can dance with Ninian. Hawkeye spawned. You can use him as an NPC without any kind of penalty, like you just let him go nuts. But the thing about NPCs, they're unpredictable, and I prefer to just not have him do that. So I just talk to him and move him back down out of range of the enemies so that Heath can just kind of dominate here. And I just hope he lands his javelin. He's out of range of the archers. They only have 2 move and 2 range, so he's barely out of range. And I want him to take care of the mages for the most part until I start on the archers. Meanwhile, Isadora is doing a very carefully calibrated movement of like 1 per turn or something to make sure she only faces like a couple enemies at a time. We're not going to clear the map until like turn 4, turn 5 anyway, so she doesn't have to rush into that part of the map and endanger her own safety.
It's the kind of case where if you're not sure about your team's capability to clear out both these units and the ones on the right, then maybe it's wise to have Green Unit Hawkeye doing some killing. Because he oftentimes goes after the ranged attackers anyway, the nomads, the brigands, etc. But in this case, we have Heath and we have Isadora, who are like the 2 ideal units for taking out these guys. So, speak for a moment about what exactly you mean by Pent getting stuck and what Heath does in order to help that, and all the other Pent-related things here, because I think there were some details left out.
Yeah, so Pent faces both bosses in this map. He just started on Jasmine. If Pent ever ends up below half HP before his face comes up, he will run away from the enemies as much as he can and use an elixir. And then he will start seeking out enemies again, but only if they're in his range. If they're not, he'll just not seek them out and stand there. And that's not helping when he wants to clear a bunch of enemies. So what you can do if you have a flyer for this map, either Heath or Isadora, or a trained Fiora, I guess, is have them fly in to either help killing those enemies or rescue drop Pent somewhere close to the enemies. And Heath can finish off enemies that Pent is weakened before he's finished with them. He ends up between the bosses, not in such a way that they will end up with a support bonus to each other, because they do have an A support together, but close enough to where he can bait them both over the next couple turns. But if he gets hit along the way, he will run away. But if he can finish the map for you, he often will. So it's like pretty important to manipulate Pent sometimes to get the kills. Also, Heath would really appreciate getting a boss kill if he can, and he can sneak in an actually for kill if he weakens the bottom boss, Paul.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty important part of the strategy, is that like keeping your eye out. See if your flyer can steal one of these boss kills. If they can't, that's fine. It's not a huge deal, but you know, if you get the opportunity.
Yeah, and this is ideal. Pent just weakened Paul for Heath, but I'm like, you know what? I don't think that Wyvern can do 13 damage to me, so I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna kill Paul, get my XP, and this Wyvern will either suicide on Pent or he will attack Heath. Probably not get one rounded, but then Pent can just finish him off. So I'm pretty sure I'm in the clear here.
This chapter went so well.
Yeah.
You know, we would love to have shown off something where, like, you know, Pent gets stuck and Heath contributes by going over and like picking him up and putting him back down again. But I think if we had to do that, this wouldn't have been the PB that it is. So
yeah.
You know.
And here I'm like, you know what? Pent has got this. I'm just moving away. Nothing else. Just let Pent do everything. Because 2 of these enemies can suicide into Pent, and the third one he can do on his own turn because he's going to move down in his direction. So just move Heath away. Don't give anyone cause to lengthen the chapter, and then Pent can just finish off that mage.
Sorry, just get out.
Yeah, just get out.
Already got a boss kill. We got the Athos drops.
Yeah,
which you do use on Heath. We want to see him in the battle report screen when we hit the extras menu after the run through's done, right?
Yeah. This is going to be the last chapter for this part. I'm splitting up into 2 parts of roughly an hour. But it's one of the more exciting ones because this is where we get to fight Lloyd, who we used to have a bit of a meme in the draft racing community where we're like, you know what, we need a Lloyd killer, then we drafted Lloyd killer. Nowadays, the Lloyd killer is generally Hector with the Sword Reaver. But buying the Sword Reaver is a pretty interesting affair. If you have Heath, you can just fly him over the river and buy the Sword Reaver, and then you drop it into convoy on Merlinus, who is deployed on the map. Someone else pulls it out, trades it to a third unit, and then that unit gives it to Hector, and then Hector can use it, as you're about to see. If you don't have Heath, what you can do is you can draft Wallace, which, according to rules, permits you to recruit or to field a unit that can recruit him, such as Florina, and then they can shop. Or you can use someone like Barcher to break the snag and then move across the river. There's so many ways to get to that Axe Reaver shop, and one of the most interesting parts of the draft race is figuring that part out. If you have a unit that can just fight Lloyd with like a Silverlance like Florina can, that also works.
Oh, that's interesting. You delay a turn here too.
Yes, this is very important. So you can bait Lloyd turn 1 with a dance, and that's what's the strat I originally got from you and a lot of other people. But then Donna was like, you know what, why don't you wait with baiting him until you have the Sword Reaver equipped, and that way you can have an extra attack against him. You face less damage overall, probably. It's just more reliable overall, because you can see the forts above Hector. If you put him on either fort, Lloyd will come for him. If you put him on the right-hand fort, then Lloyd will actually attack you at 1 range, and you can counter him on enemy phase with either a Silverlance or an Axe Reaver, or a Sword Reaver, excuse me. So here I buy an Axe Reaver for Heath himself, another Axe Reaver because they're almost like Silverlances, they're that useful, and I buy a Sword Reaver which can be used by Hector right now. Then Ken pulls it out of the convoy, and he can trade it to someone else. In this case, it can be Isadora, and Isadora gives it to Hector. And now suddenly Hector has a Sword Reaver even though he's nowhere near the shop at all. And we don't even need to use Ninian this turn. We can just put Hector up here. He has a Pure Water, so he's never really going to die unless Lloyd like double crits him or something through like 20 hits.
This is very good.
Yeah.
I actually really like this.
So
this is super clever.
And then next turn, Hector can attack Lloyd, and even if he misses, you can dance him with Ninian and have another go at it. So you have to hit 2 out of 3 with like 76 hit, I think. It's pretty good.
I guess if you really wanted to super duper 100%, then you could Ninus Grace there, but you know, Lloyd probably has no hit anyway, right? Like just...
Yeah, I think he has like 20 or 30. It's not worth it, I think. He's already like equipped with a Pure Water too. This Bishop, I'm not sure, maybe he should use a Javelin to counter him and maybe get another kill there. But I would just player phasing him with an Iron Lance to get some more XP on him.
If you have like a super RNG plus Heath, maybe you could do it.
Yeah, I mean, mine is average right now. Maybe he wouldn't run with the Javelin because it does weigh him down before promotes. He has like 9 con, Javelin weighs 11, so he would have -2. But then again, the Bishop just slow as hell. I think sometimes you can get attacked by a hero if you go in the wrong tile. So it's actually kind of important to position Heath correctly here. I just don't remember what the correct positioning is.
That's nice. Wow, I love that turn delay. That was a real treat.
Yeah, that was nice. Thank you. That will be the last chapter for today. We're going to continue next time with Crazed Beast, which I think is the most interesting chapter in the whole run, honestly. The chapter that makes draft racing so exciting is like seeing who gets the best Crazed Beast. So you have that to look forward to.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't want to bore anyone with a 2-hour video, so I'm going to bore you with 2 1-hour videos instead. So look forward to that. Thanks for joining me, Raisins, and we'll see you next time.
For sure. It was great to be on. I'll see you all next time.